938 Live. This is Talkback.
Now, like every year, merrymaking and partying is going to be a big part of our Christmas and New Year celebrations. But as we all enjoy the spirit, in inverted commas, of the season, some excesses sometimes get individuals into trouble. And the excesses that we are talking about in particular is excessive drinking. How many of us know how to drink responsibly, and how easy is it to get the balance between, having the right amount of fun and yet drinking so that you don't get yourself into trouble? Now, do you know that if you are drunk, unsteady, and you behave in a disorderly manner, you could face a fine not exceeding $1,000 or even imprisonment of up to 1 month? Yeah. If you're convicted for drink driving, you'll be disqualified for driving for at least a year. First-time offenders are fined between $1,000 to $5,000, or you're jailed up to 6 months. Very serious. Repeat offenders can be fined up to $30,000 and jailed for a maximum of 3 years. You could also be caned for up to 6 strokes should death or serious injury be caused by you. So is it really worthwhile drinking to excess, or to excess rather? And how confident are you that you know where to draw the line? Now, should establishments get in on the act and be more proactive in ensuring that their customers drink responsibly on their premises? Now, on the line with us is Shannon Fong. She is Head of Corporate Relations at Asia Pacific Breweries. As you know, for many years, Asia Pacific Breweries has been known to promote responsible drinking, particularly during the festive seasons. Now, Shannon, can you tell us what you've done in recent years and the partners that you've worked with?
We have a long-term partnership with the traffic police. So on an annual basis, we are actually involved with their year-end Drink Don't Drive campaign. So for the past 2 years, it has been the campaign known as Don't Drive to Drink. And, traditionally, as what you've said, is a season of giving, season of joy. So we want to create the kind of a campaign which doesn't dampen the holiday spirits, but yet at the same time promote responsible drinking. So it's all about giving goodies or incentives for the consumers and entice them not to drive to the watering hole, so as to avoid them from drinking and driving.
All right. Now, do you think drinking establishments across the island should be doing a little bit more to keep excessive consumption under control?
Yes, increasingly, I think the momentum has been in place, and on our part, we are approaching it on a two-pronged basis. Obviously, like what we've said earlier, we're trying to engage consumers more directly. Previously, our partnership has been, just cash sponsorships, but right now I think we're looking to work with the traffic police in a more intimate manner, i.e. our campaigns actually speak and engage the consumers directly. That's one. And on the operators front, we are actually working with them more specifically as well in the area of responsible service of alcohol. So we're encouraging operators to actually get their service staff, frontline retail staff to go get trained on how to be equipped with practical skills to empower them to mitigate potential over-service and alcohol-related harm during the festive season.
You do that with tips, right?
Yes, we do that with tips, and the training are being conducted by the Association of Bartenders and Sommeliers. Okay.
Now, I just want to be a little bit naughty. Would you be able to tell us what APB is planning for this year? Can you give us a clue, if possible? I know you're launching next week.
Yes, we're launching next week. In fact, it's on the 11th of December. Let's just say that it's about incentivizing the consumers with freebies, like, for example, taxi rides.
Okay. All right. We'll keep it there. Thank you. Thanks very much, Shannon. So we hope to get more insight, of course, next week, yeah?
Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. Shannon Fong there. She's Head of Corporate Relations at Asia Pacific Breweries. Now, in Singapore, after a second round of public consultation by the Ministry of Home Affairs, the proposal to limit public drinking has gotten strong support, actually, from respondents. 88% supported a partial ban, possibly by time or place. A partial ban from, say, 10 p.m. onwards was considered reasonable. The majority felt that an island-wide ban, however, would be too extreme. Some also suggested some more restrictions in areas with higher crime rates and incidents of disorderliness. As for the sale of liquor, 79% of the 24 who provided written feedback in the second phase supported shorter retail hours. Most of the focus group participants were in favor of stopping the sale of liquor from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. And they felt that the timeout would, probably deter impulse buys, especially for those who congregate and drink. Now, the first draft of the bill to strengthen measures on liquor sale and consumption at public places is going to be tabled in Parliament early next year. So tell us what you think. Some of the responses and the recommendations that the government has received, are they too stringent? You can start calling us on 669-11938. Now, in the studio with us is Kimberly Spikeman. She is a senior reporter with Channel News Asia. And Kimberly actually went down recently. Kim, you went down to Australia to find out a little bit more about how they handled the liquor situation. How different is their situation from ours, really?
Well, Andre, Australia has a strong drinking culture, where people enjoy just knocking back a couple of drinks after work. And I think the authorities don't have a problem with that because, it's just something people do to relax.
Right.
But the issue comes when it's a case of too much. And the numbers that have followed are pretty scary. So let's take New South Wales, for example, which is where I went with the authorities from the Home Affairs Ministry.
Right.
So the police were sharing with us, in 2010, the overall cost of alcohol misuse to the government was a whopping $3.87 billion.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly, right. So it's a huge cost in terms of policing, hospitalizations, things like that. But this is just like the price tag. If you are looking, just at the social costs and even like impact on people, you're looking at 1,800 deaths, 52,000 hospitalizations, and over 25,000 incidents of violence every year.
Well, okay, yeah. So this is per year?
Per year, that's on average, yeah.
My word. Okay, so what are the laws like and how do they come into play?
Right. So as we were looking at these, like quite worrying numbers in that sense, the authorities have sort of started looking at areas where there are lots of watering holes, basically areas where people just go to have a night out and drink.
Sure.
So of course the restrictions vary from state to state. But for example, in Sydney and Brisbane, these watering holes tend to have tougher licensing conditions that for the night spots there. So for example, their license is pegged to making sure that they ban the use of glasses, say after midnight. This is to prevent glassing incidents of people taking glasses and hitting other people with it when they're drunk.
Okay.
So you have to use plastic. You have restrictions on the type and quantity of alcohol served. So basically no shots. And then you have things like 1:30 a.m. lockouts, like where no new people can come in and you stop serving alcohol by 3
basically
a.m.
take out the fun in serving liquor, isn't it?
Yeah, and try to keep the environment as safe as possible. Basically, if you breach any of these conditions, you get a strike, and then 3 strikes could basically mean you're out of the game.
So you can establishments can lose their licenses.
Essentially, get them suspended, or just get them cancelled.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it's pretty tough.
Okay, now there was a writer who wrote into the Today Voices column, Woon Wee Min, and he suggested in his letter the RSA program, which is the Responsible Service of Alcohol certificate. Now, he says it is a requirement in Victoria. Is it a requirement in the other states as well? Would you know that?
Yes. Actually, it's pretty interesting that you should bring this up because basically the idea of having these marshals sort of pushes some of the responsibility onto the night spots in that sense, to cultivate a responsible drinking culture.
Sure.
So in Sydney and Queens, in Brisbane, basically they do have to hire responsible service of alcohol marshals on the weekend periods, the peak periods, to make sure that no one is serving alcohol to people who are too drunk.
These are marshals, literally.
Yes, exactly. And the cost, of course, is borne by the night spots. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how, the authorities get like the night spots to take some of their responsibility, so that it's not just them coming down hard wielding a stick. The night spots themselves have some kind of ownership. Yeah,
I wonder if our night spots here are going to be ready to do that. We want to hear from you on 669-11938. Tell us what you think about responsible drinking during the festive season. Now, it affects all of us. It certainly concerns you. And if you think that you're one removed, well, think again. If somebody is in the car and starts driving, if he or she is intoxicated, and you come along with your family in your car, guess what can happen if that intoxicated driver goes out of control? Okay, 669-11938. That is the number we want to hear from you at. But we'll get back to you in just a while after news and sports. Thanks for joining us here on 938 Live for Talkback. Now, like every year, merrymaking and partying is going to be, well, pretty big in all our Christmas and New Year's celebrations. The thing is, we mix up all these celebrations with drinking. Yes, apparently that's one spirit that nobody can do without. Are you a responsible drinker? Do you talk to your teenagers about drinking responsibly? Do you tell them when they can drink, or when they should drink and when they should not to drink? Yes, there is such a thing as that. Try not to drink, of course, on an empty stomach, particularly because otherwise you'll get alcohol going straight into your system and there's nothing to buffer it. So the food buffers the alcohol and it's assimilated a lot better that way. So 669-11938, we also would like to hear from you and tell us whether or not you know people who are responsible drinkers. Are you a responsible drinker yourself? Why should you keep yourself responsible? All right. Now, in the studio with us, we've got Kimberly Spikeman. She's a senior reporter with Channel News Asia. Kimberly went down to Australia with the Ministry of Home Affairs to do a study on the liquor regulations there. Kim, now, we talked about the businesses and how they have, there are certain rules and regulations that they have to have in place. They have marshals, right, who are there as well. Now, let's talk about education of youth. How are the Australians dealing with that?
Well, Andre, for education for youth in Australia, I think the police are starting to see it as a long-term strategy to help cultivate the idea of responsible drinking. So what they do in Australia is that, firstly, of course, maybe for the listeners, they should know that in Australia, the legal drinking age, like in Singapore, is 18. 18, yeah. Yeah, so there are a lot of, the fines are pretty stiff for people who indulge in underage drinking, and even for those who serve it to them. So those people have to take responsibility for their actions too. Sure. So what the police have been looking at is, rather than fine these underage drinkers when you catch them, because that's not really going to teach them anything, what they've been doing is developing a program, a very tailored, specially tailored kind of program for the youth, so that instead of just finding them, the officer can look at the person and say, okay, you know, I think you're suitable for this program. Let's get you educated about binge drinking, about the effects of too much alcohol on your health, even tips on how to get home safely. So this can be done either in person or online, if, say, you live in the more rural areas. Okay,
so if the teenager is booked,
yeah,
right?
That's right.
It doesn't mean that they're fined straight away. They're given the opportunity to go for this education.
Absolutely. Program. And the way they do it is pretty interesting. So if you go to the website, for example, in the New South Wales Police, they'll do things like panel discussions with all these younger, more well-known faces, you know, so that the teens can identify with them. Yeah. They share their experiences of what it was like to be drunk and, you know, like not able to have control of their faculties. Yes. Basically sharing experiences, watching very interesting video clips. It's that kind of program, and you know, so that they don't feel that it's you know, people trying to tell them what to do, as opposed to sharing experiences of how bad alcohol can be for you.
To what extent are parents involved in this education program?
It's interesting that you should ask that, because it sounds like it's just something that the kids go through, right? Yeah. But in Australia, like the police were sharing with us, if you go and do the face-to-face program, they would prefer that your parent come with you at the same time, so that they can learn.
Ooh, not
also.
So cool, right?
Not
to have
so
mom and
cool. That's right, absolutely. And you know, the parents themselves can try. Like, for example, face-to-face, they have these beer goggles, like literal beer goggles that
Beer
you can
goggles.
wear. Exactly, and the police let us try them as well. You put them over your head, and then it sort of blurs your vision, which is how you would be if you had too much to drink, and
Right.
then you stumble around. And it's actually really hard to walk because they want you to realize how dangerous it is to cross a road.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, if you're wearing something like that, and your parents will be there with you, and they'll get to try it too, and then they'll see what kind of situation their kids get themselves into.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is about Australia, there is a drinking culture. We know that they
That's right.
love their drink.
Yeah.
But I suppose mum and dad would have had the experience of also possibly maybe being drunk in their earlier days. But who else? I mean, who better than mum and dad than to impart all the right things, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think also because in Australia, many of them probably get introduced to alcohol
Really
even
early?
from really early, and even from their parents. So I think the authorities are very concerned that it's important for parents themselves to understand that they have a big role to play in helping the kids understand responsible drinking.
Okay, now one question is, after all that you've seen in Australia, I also know that in some parts of the US, if a teen is caught drinking in his or her house and the parents are at home, it's the parents who also get fined. So that's pretty stiff.
That is absolutely right, and it's a good
It's a good
way,
thing,
yeah.
but is that happening in Australia?
I think they have something quite similar as well, but I believe that it varies from who is the adult who is. Varies according to who is the adult who is giving
Right.
the alcohol. So I believe that if it's someone who is not related to the child and was not responsibly supervising the child when giving that child, and I use the word child loosely, of course, because
Sure.
we're talking about maybe a teenager, a young teenager.
Right.
That person could get into trouble, and I believe Australia has laws in place and fines in place for people like that.
Okay. Do you think that all that we've talked about will work here in Singapore?
Well, that's a really tough question, and it's a good one because
Yeah.
I think in Singapore's context, what is going to be a big concern is the businesses and how they're going to adapt. While we're not certain, what exactly the laws are going to be because they'll be drafted and they'll be ready next year. But of course, we know the issues that are at hand, and I think what's going to be a challenge is getting the buy-in from the businesses themselves.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
because we know that they're worried already that their customer base is going to drop. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot, Kim. Okay, you're still very young yourself. What do you do when you know that you're going to plan to drink?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think we heard from APB earlier, right?
From
I think
Shannon, yeah.
Yes, from Shannon, and I think that's probably the strongest message that comes out, right? Don't drive, essentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think for us, especially for people of my age, in the 20s generally, we're made so aware of all this, on social media, on TV, things like that. So I guess that's the strongest message, stay safe, be responsible, not just for yourself, but for others as well. So I think that's something that hopefully the listeners share as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kimberly Spikeman, senior reporter from Channel News Asia. And for those of you who were thinking of calling in but couldn't call in, probably you might be in your cars and stuck in that jam, we'd still like to hear from you on our Facebook page, Official 938 Live.